everybody. Welcome back to the Can We Get Much Higher podcast. With me on my left, we have Bob Nastanovich, who is the keyboardist, drummer of band Silver Jew and Pavement. Bob, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I was born in 1967 in Rochester, New York. I just had my 54th birthday. Um, I was in, as far as music goes, I was in Pavement, the Silver Jews. In Pavement's case, since 1990, and then basically around the same time. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was in those bands. In the Silver Jews, I was like an original member. I played drums and did some Moog things on the first handful of recordings, and then I was replaced. And then with Pavement, I would have been in it all the way through for all the live shows.
Yeah, yeah.
My role sort of evolved. I played drums and percussion and samples and keyboards, and I did a lot of screaming Hollis.
Yeah.
I can scream well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a handy thing for rock, especially. Again, I've already thanked you.
I guess. I mean, for some people, it's rather offensive.
Yeah, true. But I mean,
yeah, essentially the reason why I ended up screaming in Pavement is that Steve Malcomus, who wrote the majority of the songs in Pavement, he would have parts that would shred his vocal cords, so he kind of turned them all over to me. So
right, yeah.
I had the pleasure of singing or screaming, and I would also try to sing, but I can't really carry a tune.
Yeah.
And I never really intended to be in a band at all. I was kind of like you. I was just like, a record collector, and somebody went to gigs a lot, and suddenly at the age of 22, 23, I had some very talented friends, so I ended up being in bands with them, and it was a kind of a glorious way to spend your 20s. And I thought both of them, Stephen Malkmus and David Berman, were very uniquely talented people, and they were two of my best mates. So in a lot of ways, like, I'm just very fortunate.
Yeah. Talking about records and record collecting, I myself am a pretty big record collector, but obviously you also own a small record label, Broker Tip Records. How is it like running like a record, I don't know, small record label, or I don't know, how does it work, in the record business?
Well, in the music business on my level, which is sort of the lowest rung, um, essentially Brokership Records exists because there's friends of mine and some artists who I don't know personally who make really, really good music that, as you know, in this day and age, there are really millions of bands.
Yeah. Especially with like Spotify and SoundCloud and
The
free
whole
streaming
shebang.
sites. Yeah.
I mean, I would say, like, compared to when like Pavement started in 89, 90, I would say there's like 30 times the bands now. So I just feel like there's some really talented people out there making music. So Broker's Tip, which is a nonprofit, which I run out of the house, we just put out two or three releases a year to give an opportunity to people that otherwise would be largely ignored by the music industry. Ideally, when bands go on tour these days, as you know, they depend on selling records at their shows, and that, obviously playing live gigs has been rather defunct since the pandemic. So at this point, we're looking forward to getting them back on tour because I usually put out like a limited edition of like 300 to 500 records. When I say like lowest rung, I'm not kidding. Like, I run it out of my house. There's boxes of records in a bedroom here. I live in a small house, and I've got a website, brokersiprecords.com. And then actually I've sent several records to Australians. I probably have like 6 to 8 followers in Australia. My good mate who lives not far from you, Paul Joss is his name. He would have ordered just about everything. So essentially, we're reliant on about 100 customers. And it's just me that runs it. Holiday Sidewinder is kind of a famous Australian artist. I put out a 7-inch of hers. That's been a really good seller. I mean, I'll put out anything sort of if I like it. You know, it's one of
Yeah,
those
yeah,
kind of things. Like I actually get as many submissions to put out records as I do sell records.
right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, so I don't understand why people would want to be on broker's tip, other than it's an incredibly good deal. The way it works is I pay for everything. I've got a guy in Madison, Wisconsin named Chris Landcamp who works for a company, Super Duper Records, Super Duper
Yeah,
Records.net, and he does everything for me. So and I just pay him.
yeah, yeah.
It's just a good deal. The way I look at it, you know, like is it's just an opportunity for me to provide a platform for
For smaller artists to
a smaller
yeah,
artist
yeah.
who really deserve to have, because it is a
Like
stamp
a small
for them.
platform, like who still do, like who are good enough to who should still like who should have a smaller like a bigger platform than they're already like on.
That and they like to me, like in the early days of both Pavement and Silver Jews, there's a big difference between selling cassettes and burn CDs and being on Bandcamp or
Yeah, yeah,
Spotify or whatever, and actually having a piece of vinyl. So what we do
yeah,
at Brooker's Tip is we give these bands an opportunity to put their music on vinyl,
yeah,
which then provides them with a 7-inch or a 12-inch to sell at their gigs.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I love the diversity of my roster. C Night from San Francisco, Ron Rama from Richmond, my buddy MG Clark in Colorado, Martin Dosh is actually kind of big. He plays drums with a pretty famous guy named Andrew Bird. Now new ultra. It's just like it's a good opportunity to put out music by really cool people who
Who,
otherwise I don't think.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then,
yeah.
to be honest with you, Hollis, nothing would make me happier than a band on Burger's Tip like being signed to a bigger
To
thing.
like a bigger label, like that would be like the ideal, you know. That'd just be like it'd be kind of cool, right? To see someone who you like personally like brought up to a higher level, and then you know they're at like the highest stage that they could possibly be.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not in it for the money. Like in an
Yeah, yeah,
ideal world, I break even.
yeah,
You know, nothing would be make me happier than to have like, you know, talented artists like Lucy Arnell or Piranha Rama or Odd Pets from here, or Crooked Taurus, like the bands I put out, like get recognition and maybe like sign to something where they had
yeah,
kind of a real. And I don't even. There's not even a business ID. I mean,
yeah,
like it's just like I'm not worried about it because it's a nonprofit. Like I'm not going to
yeah,
get taxed on it. So we've got merch. You know, we've got hats and
yeah.
T-shirts and stuff, and we've got. You know, I'd say at this point we've got about 11 different releases lying around the house,
Mm,
and they're all for sale. And we'll ship them all over the world, mate.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
pretty cool
So
stuff.
yeah. So out of the I mean, so you were on all five of the Pavement releases, and you're on is it three of the Silver Jew records? Or is there only two of the Silver Jew records?
Well, I think I was actually on as many Silver Cheese releases as Pavement ones. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
um, the Pavement ones that I was on prevalently were Wowie's Eye, Bright in the Corners, and Terror Twilight a bit.
yeah,
And then I was also on the Watery Domestic EP.
yeah,
And then I was definitely on, with Silver Jews, I was on Starlight Walker for sure, the Arizona record, and all the material were recorded before then.
yeah,
Dime Map of the Reef. And then I also made appearances on a couple of the later records.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the Silver Jews, like, keep in mind, like, I'm a drummer,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
can't, I've never really bothered to learn how to play a kick drum.
yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't really interest me. And I don't really practice music too often.
yeah. Mm.
Um, so, I completely understand, like, why somebody like David in particular would want to have like a real drummer,
A real, yeah, yeah, yeah,
and then none of it ever hurt my feelings. You know, it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
to
yeah,
get replaced. You know,
yeah, yeah. Um,
I mean, I know what I can do, and people ask me to jam all the time and stuff, like not
yeah,
all
yeah,
the
yeah.
time, but like occasionally. But I can only really play Pavement and Silver Jews songs, to be honest.
Right.
Honest, I'm just being serious.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
people, come up and join us for a cover of like the CCR song or something. I don't,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's not my style. Like I just like to play Pavement and Silver Jews songs because in a lot of cases the songs are near and dear to my heart and I'm really if I think about my musical career, I'm really sort of like kind of best known as a live
Yeah, as a
performer.
live
And
performer. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, studios always kind of frightened me in that I felt really unnatural in them because,
Mm.
unlike the other guys in Pavement, for example, Mark Eibold and Scott Camberg and Steve West,
Yeah.
those guys, they can play, and obviously Malcomus can play, and
Yeah.
in the case of Silver Jews, he had wonderful musicians around him. I just like to perform.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Talking about live performances, what was the most fun live performance, or a couple of the best live performances that you guys have had? Like that you have been at.
Oh, where I would have played?
Yeah.
I mean, I played over 1,000 gigs. In 2010, there's sometimes when you go on stage and just kind of like
You feel the
everything,
energy.
everything sounds right is sort
Yeah.
of key,
Yeah.
especially if you're a bit hard of hearing. Um, we played a lot of places in the U.S. that were always sort of like welcome for us to play.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about going to Australia for the first time, like playing at like places like Lansdowne Hotel and like even like we played it's really a hard question in that if you played over 1,000 gigs, like you'd like to think about 100 of those you felt like when you left the stage after the show that um, I kind of would always think to myself like there might have been really other good bands that played somewhere around the world tonight or just musicians in general, but if I felt really good about it, then I would think like there probably wasn't there might not have been a better band that played a live show tonight. Now, saying that, there's several disasters along the way, so it sort of makes you appreciate the the great moments more. So I mean, if you think about Pavement, in Pavement's case, I think we would have played gigs in like 25 to 30 different countries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'll tell you one gig that sort of stands out to me. We played the first show we ever played in the UK was at a club in Derby in England,
Mm.
and we'd only ever played in the US before that. This would have been in '92, and we started off with like "Summer Babe," which is one of the more well-known Pavement
Yeah.
songs, and
Yeah.
like just to hear the response from the crowd was quite remarkable.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, Pavement was sort of always maybe more appreciated in the UK than a lot of other places. Like, we're an American band, but at the same time, like, I really feel like we're kind of bigger in the UK and
Yeah.
Holland and Germany, Sydney, Melbourne. I mean, wonderful. It's always wonderful play in both Sydney and Melbourne. We have an audience in Perth. It was wonderful to go to New Zealand three different times for 3 tours. There's nothing quite like playing in Japan.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, no, basically, in layman's terms, like if the music sounds good and you're really into it, then it's really hard to pinpoint a gig or 2 or 3 gigs. I mean, it was just you could tell like in the first 3 songs whether it was going to be a struggle or not.
Mm.
And one thing I did in Pavement is I usually made the set list, and I took a lot of pride in that, like organizing which live songs to play.
Mm.
I mean, I did that the majority of the time, and you had to base a lot of those decisions on Malcolm's tunings, stuff like
Mm.
that. Um, but yeah, no, it's you do a tour that's like 45 gigs in 48 days,
Yeah.
like 15 of them are good. To me, it's a remarkable tour. you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
I
What
mean,
were? Oh,
sadly, I guess I probably remember the bad moments as much as the good, you know.
mm.
There were
What were a
a lot of
couple of the
those.
best memories from performing and recording with Steve Malcomus?
Um, Steve's like a consummate professional.
Yeah.
He came to recording situations really well prepared. A lot of cases, the band was trying to catch up to what he was doing.
Mm.
That includes all of us. I've known Steven since I was 18 years old, and I've watched him play guitar since he was 18. And so he's just the kind of person that, the kind of talent that you never really sort of concern yourself or worry about him. You're more sort of concerned with yourself. But I would say that of the highlights recording with Malcolmus would have been with Malcolmus and Berman when we made Starlight Walker in Memphis. Um, it was we'd added Steve West to the band, and I thought it was, it was like 3 days in a studio where we had to record like 15 tracks, and like
Mm.
just watching those two guys get along and like make beautiful music was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm guess you're a music nerd. I mean, you collect records. You
No,
maybe.
since I was like 12 years old.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, as a
I do a
younger.
podcast. I do a music podcast.
Oh, did you?
No, I've done. I just did one
Oh,
last
you
night.
have the. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've done 169 episodes of a thing called Three Songs Pod. It's Twitter is like at numeral three SONGS POD, and I do it with my buddy Mike Hogan. It's on SoundCloud and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's pretty much like kind of a summation of both of our musical experiences throughout the
Mm.
course of our lives, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
40 plus years of listening to music, and like it's fun.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, talking about the early stages of your listening, who was a couple bands or a couple albums that influenced you to get into music, or who just influenced you as a younger artist?
I mean, right off the bat, I would think of two records that changed my life were Gang of Four Entertainment, which is made in the late 70s in Leeds, one of the greatest rock and roll albums of all time, and then Double Nickels on the Dime by Minutemen. Um, and then I like, if I think in a more obscure fashion, like Saccharine Trust, Pagan Icons EP, and things like Torch of the Mystics by Sun City Girls, Spiderland by Slint,
Mm.
even like really obscure records like Musicality by Sulaco,
Mm.
um, early Echo and the Bunnymen stuff. Um, my sister was really cool. She's 2 years, and she is really cool. Thank God she's still with us. She was like, she turned me on to things like when I was a kid, like Pretenders and the Police when I was like, 10, 12 years old.
Mm.
I remember seeing The Clash when I was 13 at William and Mary Hall, and it blew my mind.
Mm.
So yeah, like from a young, but like really, like I would say Gang of Four Entertainment, um, Porcupine Crocodiles, and Heaven Up Here by Echo and the Bunnymen,
Yeah.
Minutemen, Double Nickels on the Dime. There's just so many records
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that I adored. Because keep in mind, when you start buying records when you're that young, like
Yeah.
your mind is so open,
Mm.
and even hearing like Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division was mind blowing. Even though it seemed
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it was a little sort of dark for my like kind of suburban upbringing, but it was just like some sort of mysterious world that I couldn't really put a finger on.
Mm.
So um, that's been a wonderful adventure, to be honest with you.
Mm. Well, now as someone who's more experienced with music, has listened to a lot of music, obviously. Who is someone who 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 are some like the top artists that you have well in the last few years who have really like grown on you?
There's an Indonesian band called Senyawa, Senyawa, and they've kind of blown my mind this summer. They're doing something really unique. Um, it's very strange and tribal sounding. They have an album called Akaraki, A
Yeah,
C A
yeah,
R
I've
A
listened. Yeah,
K I.
yeah, yeah. I was just making sure it was that band. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely dig them. I think that once you listen to music for like a really long time, who knows? Like, it just who knows what will float your boat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I've just been digging that. Lots of other things. I could flip through. Like I DJ'd recently. Um, there's just it's been one great thing about the podcast is sort of like forces me to listen to music so I can prepare for the podcast.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
So I've actually discovered more things in the last 2 years that I would have done in the previous decade.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, no, there's some really and I guarantee that like what I've listened to is like really like 1/10,000th of what's being made. But like
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
terms of like modern artists that are successful, like obviously like PJ Harvey's one of the greatest artists of my lifetime.
Mm,
I'm always very intrigued by what Courtney Barnett does. I think
mm.
she's really brilliant. Um, there's just a lot of really cool and creative people out there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Um.
mean, like basically, like you can go through a day, and it's unlike the early '90s. It's just sort of limitless. Like there's so many things. What's sort of interesting to me, and I'm not going to really get into it too much because I don't want to really badmouth anybody. In in the sense that I feel like a lot of things that are getting celebrated today as being really cool or being really indie um, are actually not very good.
Mm,
I don't really know how, or at least, you know, one really important point I'd like to make, Hollis, is that um, music snobbery is a waste of time. So like disliking somebody because they don't like music that you like or they have completely different tastes is not a big deal. Like
mm.
music is just like any other form of entertainment. Like you dig what you dig,
Yeah.
and you dig it for a reason,
Yeah.
and whether it's big or small. I
Yeah.
mean, like it doesn't even matter. So I just think there's a lot of magical things going on out there, and that you definitely should never turn your nose up at anybody for liking something that you think is shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, one of the biggest bands in the world these days, they put them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for what it's worth, is Foo Fighters.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, since I don't really get it,
Yeah.
so I'm not, yeah, that kind of thing. So I mean, it's just like I'm not like a snob, like half of my friends like that shit, but like to me
Yeah.
it's shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is like, at some points, like, just what, yeah, like, I mean, okay, I love NWA, right? Like, I think,
Right out of Compton and that,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I love NWA, but they're not rockin', like, they're not, like, sure, they're hardcore, like, they're hardcore hip hop, whatever, but it's not rock. There is no, like, they got was it inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I'm like,
Oh, did they now? Yeah.
but they're not rock and roll. So I don't know.
Well, they're like off the strength of Straight Out of the Compton.
Yeah, yeah.
It
But
was a landmark album.
it
I mean,
was a landmark. Yeah, I mean it
I
was
listened.
like,
It was like 19, 20 years old. I was as far as I'm concerned, like just like Pavement, they were right time, right place. Obviously, they were a lot more successful,
Mm.
and their impact on popular culture is far larger. But one thing you have to keep in mind about music is like, spirit of the times, the zeitgeist. Like when they released that album in 1986, I believe, straight out of
Yeah.
Compton, the world was thirsting for it the same way that they were thirsting for Public Enemy records.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and that was the East Coast rival. So, and
Yeah.
that kind of carried on through hip hop. But
I mean, yeah,
to
you saw it.
me,
Yeah, yeah.
like Eric B. and Rakim and Gangstar were
Okay, I'm
similarly
surprised you actually said that.
formidable.
I love
Um,
Gangstar and Eric B and Rakim and whatever. Actually, Gangstar are one of my
yeah,
favorite hip hop groups probably ever.
I mean Newark, New Jersey. I mean, we played with them on the same stage at Reading Festival in the early to mid '90s, and like that, I've seen two amazing um, hip hop concerts in my life, and they would have been one.
Mm.
And then Public Enemy was awful, and I saw KRS One do an
KRS One,
amazing
yeah, yeah,
show.
yeah. Was it with
But
was KRS One with Boogie Down Productions at the time, or was it just his
no,
solo, just him
it
by
was
himself?
solo, and I don't know how he did it. Like he kept bringing up these amazingly wizardly. Pavement had played the same night in Tampa, in the old part of town, the Cuban part of town.
Mm.
And we finished our show, and then he was coming on, so we ran like a couple blocks over to see it. Like he just kept bringing up this amazing cast of characters,
Mm.
singing background vocals, and it was just the guy delivered the goods.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hip hop is a really, as far as I can tell, because
Yeah.
I mean I've only ever seen like, I mean I saw that Old Dirty Bastard
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
in Louisville. I've seen a lot of things. It's a really hard thing to pull off, and as far as I can tell, live.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Oh, for sure. Like,
Cypress
yeah.
Cypress Hill, we played an entire Lollapalooza with them, and like I just whatever.
I
They were
feel
better than us, but
Yeah, yeah. I feel like with hip hop, well, one, it is a very broad genre, right? Like there's actually like a lot of different, like there's like jazz rap, and then there's like I don't know, there's like hardcore hip hop and boom bap, and then there's also like the East Coast and West Coast type scene, and then there's obviously now there's like pop rap, and then there's like it's evolved into this massive genre. I mean, I personally I was that's what it got me into music a lot more. But
yeah, I think like
yeah.
I think you probably know a lot more about it than
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do.
yeah. Well, about live albums and stuff like that, like, there's only like I've seen like a lot of live stuff from like rappers and stuff, and like especially like Wu Tang. Like I love Wu Tang. I think also the solo records, a few of the solo records, are fantastic. But I've just seen them. I haven't physically. I've seen on YouTube and stuff like that, and I was gonna see them live, and then COVID and whatever. But
They're still going.
but
Some version.
yeah, but I don't know. It didn't have the same energy as it did bring in like in the actual album. And also, but someone who, well, my favorite artist of all time, Kanye, right?
Yeah.
The way he does his live albums is something that I've never seen anyone do any other genre. Like, if you watch like videos of, okay, so he has the Late Orchestration, which is his only live album, like the only one he's released, which is a mix between his first two albums, and he has it with like an orchestra, and he brings so much energy into it. And then he also has the Yeezus tour, which is quite renowned as like the greatest show ever, and the people who have gone are like this, like, because. And he doesn't just like do a live performance. Like he sets up this $1 million scene, just to and on the Life of Pablo tour, he had like a platform, like a floating platform, and he'd perform on that. And then in the Kids See Ghosts, he had this like floating like glass box, and he'd just perform in that. And the way that he just puts a lot of stuff into his live performances, his albums actually make more sense, because it's quite orchestral, or quite I don't know, quite epic, quite it sounds incredible, but when it's put in a live context, like his album 808s and Heartbreak, although I love it, I would say it's one of his weaker records. But when he did it live, it was one of his best records. Like it was one of the best experience. Like I hadn't seen it live, but I watched on YouTube, and I was just I was
enthralled.
amazed.
You were
Yeah.
enthralled.
It was just because it's like I'm watching it, and it's like there's the orchestra, and then there's his actual energy, and he doesn't just have like his features just in the background. He has all his features like with him. Like when he did the Coachella 2011, which was after My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. When he performed Runaway, when he performed Runaway, he'd have Pusha T, who's the feature, come on, and then Touch the Sky. I'm pretty sure Lupe Fiasco came on. Like all the features were there. It wasn't just like a recording in the background, and then he'd get the crowd to sing it. He had the actual physical people come, which is something that with I'd see like not in hip hop. There's not a lot of features popping up in like live performances and stuff. It's very just like record your feature, send it in to me, and then you're done. Not like do this live performance, do this studio recording with me, and then do the live performance. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a big budget.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to hear that he delivers the goods for his fans.
Mm.
I think that's pretty cool. He clearly suffers from malignant narcissism.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
If you could
I've never heard one of his songs in my life.
Yeah.
That I know of,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying like, whatever, like, I don't really, I just don't think about him.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you could choose yeah, sure. If you could choose a musician, or an artist or a producer to do a collaboration album with, who would it be?
Well, it's funny. I've always wanted to, En Vogue.
Yeah. Last question before, I don't know, we can just talk a little bit more about music. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick 5 albums for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Pink Flag by Wire.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's Only Right Natural by the Frogs. Sulaco Musicality. Casually Classic by Los Indios Tabajaras. And The Fall Live at the Witch Trials.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, they're all pretty... I love the first one that you said, Pink Flag by The Wire.
It's one of the greatest.
It's one of my it's one of my favorite. Yeah, it's one of my favorite punk records album. Probably,
I love the song Strange. I just love the whole album. It's a perfect album.
Yeah.
Like getting for entertainment, I mean, even like things to me, like when I was a kid, REM. I can't have any musical conversation without leaving them out.
Yeah.
REM, Murmur, Reckoning. I mean, I'll tell you one that like you might not have heard. The Red Sea by Thin White Rope.
No, never heard of it.
Yeah, amazing live band, amazing album. Those are difficult questions to answer because there's so many fucking great albums made.
Yeah, there are a lot. Yeah. I mean, especially
and like to, 5 would be difficult.
Yeah,
I would say like if you're like on a desert island, you only have a choice of 5 albums. Maybe you should just say like, I'm not going to take any records because obviously get sick of the 5 in a month and thirst for something else that I love. Maybe it'd be better to completely divorce yourself from music. Like
from music and title, yeah.
Yeah, when Pavement stopped being a band in '99, like there was like a 3 or 4 year period which I've gone back and kind of rediscovered, where I was just kind of sick of like listening to music, so I stopped kind of listening to music. So I've enjoyed going back and rediscovering things that I would have missed.
Yeah.
Nothing comes off the top of my head. It was just time for like us to stop being in a band, and Malcomus wanted to play in a band with people that he could play in a band with, as opposed to people that lived in 5 different cities and that kind of thing, So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that pretty much closes it out. Thank you, Bob, for joining us.
My pleasure, my man. My pleasure, Hollis. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, see ya.
What's your favorite? What's your favorite record from the last 3 months that you've discovered?
Last 3 months that I've discovered. If I can't.
Current. What is your favorite?
Give me a second to like because I have like my lists and my rankings and.
Hold on, real quick. Who's your favorite current Sydney artist? Your age group sort of thing, sort of underground.
Sydney artist. There's is a really good hip hop artist.
Oh, cool. Sydney has hip hop.
Yeah. I forgot his name.
That's right.
I can answer your 3 months thingy. I've got a couple. There's Yankee Hotel Foxtrot by Wilco. It's a really good indie rock.
Yeah. Great band.
Asia Turs, Bruin by Sigur Rós is.
Incredible. I'm happy you're digging them. That's cool, man.
And also, I got into Who's Next by The Who.
Oh, that's wild, man. So you've actually like rediscovering like classic rock.
Oh yeah. And then so I always like liked Heaven or Las Vegas, but like I really started getting into it recently.
Cool.
What else is it? There's a really good underground hip hop artist who doesn't release his stuff anywhere, but people have managed to leak the album and stuff like that. It's called The Gat by Mac Homie. It's like a really good.
Oh man,
it's
thanks.
Like it's short, and it's called Crumbling by Midair Thief. They're a Korean psychedelic.
How do you spell the band name?
It's mid apostrophe airspace thief. One of the songs on Crumbling, I think it's the second song. It's called "Are These Chains?" is one of the it's such a beautiful record. Like it is easily one of the most my favorite records.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the tips. And remember, obviously you have a massive appetite for music, and I really appreciate that. Don't worry about what other people think. Just tell people what you love.
Yeah.
And if they don't like it, screw them.
Yeah.
Music's just like anything else.
Yeah.
It's for us to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And don't judge people for what they like.
Yeah.
Because if you like music, then it's a blessing.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, is that gonna be it? Anything else
my
you wanted
pleasure,
to say?
Man.
All right. Well,
see you in Australia in 2023. I think Pavement will be down in Australia in 2023 as far as
all right. Well, peace.
Feeling the listening to me, you pray. Feeling the energy, feeling the synergy, I know you love me.